Hello and welcome to my cozy Christmas corner. Today we are going to enjoy a beautiful fairy tale from this beautiful book here, Hans Christian Andersen, Fairytales. And since it's almost Christmas, we are going to read a fairy tale about a fir tree. The fairy tale is called The Fir Tree. So I will just take my glasses, my reading glasses, and let's read. Out in the forest stood a pretty little fir tree. It was in a pleasant position, open to the sun and air, and around it grew many of its big companions, both fir and pine. But the little fir tree was so anxious to grow that it gave no thought to the warm sun and fresh air. It paid no heed to the children's chatter when they were out gathering strawberries or raspberries. Sometimes they would come over with a full crock of strawberries, bedded on straw, sit down by the little tree and say, "Oh, what a sweet little tree." But the little tree never listened. By the next year it was taller by a new branch, and the next year that by yet another, because you can always tell a fir tree's age by the number of branch joints it has. "Oh, if only I were a big tree like the others," sighed the little tree. "Then I could spread my branches far about and look out over the wide world from my tip. The birds would build nests among my branches, and when the wind blew, I would be able to bow with dignity like those others." It took no pleasure in the sunshine or the birds or the pink clouds which sailed above it night and morning. When winter came and the snow lay sparkling white about it, a rabbit would often jump right over the little tree. It was most annoying. But 2 winters passed, and by the third the tree was so tall that the rabbits had to run round it. To grow up, grow tall, grow old. They were the only things that mattered to the tree. In the autumn, the woodcutter always came to cut down some of the biggest trees. It happened every year, and the young fir tree, which was now very well grown, shuddered as the mighty trees fell to the earth with a groan and a crash. The branches were chopped off until the trees looked quite naked, long and slender. They were almost unrecognizable by the time they were laid on the carts and the horses pulled them out of the forest. Where were they going? What awaited them? In the spring, when the stork and swallows came, the tree asked them, "Do you know where they are taken? Have you ever seen them?" The swallows knew nothing, but the stork thoughtful nodded his head and said, Well, I think I do, for I saw many new ships when I flew back from Egypt. The ships bore mighty masts, and I dare say they were your trees. They smelled like fir trees. They held their heads high, I can assure you. Oh, if only I were big enough to fly across the sea. What is it like, this sea? It would take much too long to explain, said the stork, walking away. Enjoy your youth, said the sunbeams. Enjoy your new growth, the young life inside you. The wind kissed the tree, and the dew wept tears over it. But the fir tree did not understand. Now it was Christmas time, when young trees were felled. Trees often no bigger or older than our fir tree, which could not live in peace and quiet, but was always wanting to be on the move. These young trees, and they were the prettiest of all, always kept their branches when they were laid on the carts and pulled out of the forest by horses. Where are they going? Asked the fir tree. They're no bigger than I am. In fact, one of them was much taller. Why do they keep all their branches? Where did they take them? We know that, twittered the sparrows. Down in the town, we look in at the windows. We know where they're taken. Oh, there's the greatest glory and splendor you can imagine. We have peeped in at the windows and seen how they are planted in the middle of the warm room and decorated with the most beautiful things. Golden apples and ginger biscuits, toys and hundreds of candles. And then, asked the fir tree, trembling in every branch. And then? What happens then? We've seen no more than that. It was wonderful. Perhaps I came into the world to take that glittering path, the fir tree rejoiced. That would be even better than sailing across the sea. I ache with longing. If only it were Christmas time. Now I am as tall and my branches spread as widely as the ones that were taken last year. Oh, if only I were on that cart. If only I was in that warm room, in all that glory and splendor. And then, yes, then comes something even better, even more beautiful. Otherwise, why should they decorate me? There must be something even bigger afterwards, even more wonderful. But what? Oh, I ache. I yearn. I don't even know myself. What is the matter with me? Be happy with me, said the air and the sunlight. Enjoy your fresh youth out in the open air. But the little tree was not happy. It went on growing and growing, winter and summer. It kept its green, a proud dark green. The people who saw it said, "What a beautiful tree!" And at Christmas time, it was the first to be cut. The axe cut deep into its pith. The tree fell to the earth with a sigh, helpless and in pain, quite unable to think of happiness. It grieved at leaving its home, the place where it had grown up, for it knew that never again would it see its dear old companions, or the little bushes and flowers about it. Indeed, it might never see the birds again. The parting was far from pleasant. The tree did not begin to recover until it was in the yard, being unpacked with the other trees, and heard a man say, "That one is splendid. That's the one we want." Two servants in livery came and carried the tree into a big, beautiful hall. There were portraits hanging on the wall, and beside the big tiled stove stood great Chinese vases with lions on their lids. There were rocking chairs, silk sofas, big tables covered with picture books, and toys worth 100 times 100 crowns. Or so the children said. And the fir tree was placed in a big bucket filled with sand. But no one could see it was a bucket, because it was covered with green cloth and stood on a big, gaily colored rock. Oh, how the tree trembled! What was going to happen? The servants and the young ladies all helped to decorate it, hanging little nets made of colored paper on the branches, each net filled with sweets. Gilded apples and walnuts hung there as if growing from the tree, and over 100 red, blue, and white candles were attached to the branches. Lifelike dolls. The tree had never seen such things before. Perched on its green twigs and its very tip, they fixed a big tinsel star. It was magnificent, absolutely magnificent. "Tonight," they all cried, "tonight will be brilliant." Oh, thought the tree, if only it were night, if only the candles were lit. And I wonder what will happen then. Will the older trees in the forest come and look at me? Will the sparrows fly to the windows? Shall I take root here and be decorated from head to foot all summer and winter long? And here's a beautiful painting of the tree in the living room. With all the children dancing around it and celebrating Christmas. It knew a lot, but it had a bad bark ache from sheer longing, and bark ache is just as uncomfortable for a tree as a headache is for us. The candles were lit at last, so bright, so splendid, that the tree quivered in every branch, causing one of the candles to set the green needles alight, which scorched it badly. God, save us!" shrieked the young ladies, putting the fire out hastily. Now the tree did not even dare to tremble. Oh, this was awful. It was terrified of losing any of its splendor. It was quite confused by all the glory. Then the double doors flew open, and a whole crowd of children rushed in, as if they were about to knock the tree down. The older people followed more soberly. For a moment, the little ones were completely silent, but then they shouted until the hall echoed with their joy. They danced round the tree, and one present after another was plucked from it. "What are they doing?" thought the tree. "What is going to happen?" The candles burned right down to the branches, and when they had burned down, they were put out. Then the children were allowed to plunder the tree. They flung themselves at it so that every branch groaned. And but for the string by which the fixed golden star was attached to the ceiling, the tree would have fallen over. The children danced round with their splendid presents, and everyone forgot the tree, except the old nanny, who walked round, peering among the branches. But that was only to see if the children had left a fig or an apple behind. "A story, a story," shouted the children, pulling a fat little man towards the tree. He sat right underneath it, saying, "We'll be in the greenwood then, and it will be especially good for the tree to listen. But I'm only going to tell you one story. Do you want the one about Chicky Licky, or the one about Humpty Dumpty, who fell down the stairs, but still won the throne and the princess?" "Chicky Licky," shouted some, and others shouted Humpty Dumpty. In all the shouting and shrieking, only the fir tree stood quite silent, thinking, "Am I not to be part of it all? Is there nothing for me to do?" But of course, it had already been part of it all, and it had already done what it was supposed to do. So the man told the story of Humpty Dumpty, who fell down the stairs and still won the throne and the princess. And the children clapped their hands and shouted, "Another one, another one," because they wanted Chicky Licky as well. But Humpty Dumpty was all they were going to get. The fir tree stood silent and thoughtful, for the birds in the forest had never told a story like that. Humpty Dumpty fell down the stairs and still won the princess. Yes, that's how the world goes, thought the fir tree, believing the story to be true, because the man who told it was so respectable. Yes. Who knows, perhaps I shall fall downstairs and win a princess too. And it looked forward to being dressed with candles and toys, gold and fruit the next day. I shan't tremble tomorrow, it thought. I'll really enjoy all my splendor. Tomorrow I shall hear the story about Humpty Dumpty again, and perhaps the one about Chicky Licky too. The tree stood silent and thoughtful all night long. In the morning, the manservant and the maidservant came in. They're going to decorate me again, thought the tree. But they dragged it out of the big hall, up the stairs, and into the loft, where they put it in a dark corner, without a chink of daylight. What does this mean? Thought the tree. What am I supposed to do here? What am I going to hear? It thought and thought as it stood leaning against the wall, and it had plenty of time to think as the days and nights passed. Nobody came, and when at last someone did come, it was only to push some big boxes into the corner. The tree was completely hidden now, and one might have thought that it had been forgotten altogether. It's winter out there now, thought the tree. The earth is hard and covered with snow, and the people would not be able to plant me. So I suppose they are going to shelter me here until the spring. How considerate, how kind people are. If only it were not so dark and terribly lonely. Not even a little rabbit for company. It really was delightful out in the woods when the snow was on the ground and the rabbits came leaping by, even when they jumped right over me. But in those days, I did not like it. It certainly is lonely up here, though. Peep, peep, said a little mouse, which had popped out at that moment, and then came another little one. They sniffed around the fir tree, slipping from branch to branch. It's awfully cold, they said. Otherwise, this is a wonderful place to be in. Don't you think so, old fir tree? I'm not old at all, said the fir tree. There are lots much older than me. Where do you come from? Asked the mice. And what do you know? They were awfully curious. Tell us about the most beautiful place on earth. Have you been there? Have you been in the larder, where there is cheese on the shelves and hams hanging from the ceiling, where you can dance on tallow candles and go in thin and come out fat? I don't know about that, said the tree, but I know the forest where the sun shines and the birds sing. And it told them all about its youth, the like of which the little mice had never heard before. And after listening, they said, "What a lot you have seen! How lucky you have been!" "I," said the fir tree, thinking over its own story. "Yes, all in all, those were very pleasant times." But then it told them about Christmas Eve, when it had been decorated with biscuits and candles. "Oh," said the little mice, "how lucky you have been, old fir tree." "I'm not old at all," said the tree. This is the winter. When I left the forest, I am in my prime. It's only that my growth has been stopped. You tell stories so beautifully, said the little mice. And the next night they brought 4 more little mice to listen to the tree. And the more it talked, the more clearly it remembered everything. Those really were pleasant times, it thought. But they may come again. They may come. Humpty Dumpty fell down the stairs and won the princess after all. Perhaps I can win a princess too. It was remembering a pretty little birch tree, which had been growing in the wood, and which was a real princess to the fir tree. Who is Humpty Dumpty? Asked the little mice. So the tree told them the whole story. It could remember every single word, and the little mice were ready to jump to the top of the tree in their delight. The next night many more mice came, and on Sunday 2 rats came along as well. But they said the story was not amusing, and that depressed the little mice and made them think less of it too. Is that the only story you know? Asked the rats. The only one, said the tree. I heard it on my happiest evening, but at that time I never thought how happy I was. It's an extremely poor story, don't you know any larder stories? No, said the tree. Well, that's that then, said the rats, and went home. In the end, the little mice left too, and the tree sighed. It really was very nice having those lively little mice sitting round me, listening to my story. And now that too is over. But I shall remember to enjoy myself when I am taken out again. But when did that happen? Well, it was one morning when people came and rummaged round the loft. Boxes were moved. The tree was pulled out and thrown rather hard across the floor. But a servant immediately dragged it to the stairs, where there was daylight. Now life is beginning again, thought the tree, feeling the fresh air and the first rays of the sun. And now it was out in the yard, everything happening so quickly, and the tree forgot to look at itself because there were so many other things to see. The yard was next to a garden full of flowers, roses hanging, soft and fragrant, over the little railings, lime trees in bloom, and swallows flying about, chirping, tweet, tweet, tweet. My husband has come. But they did not mean the fir tree. I'm going to live now, it rejoiced, spreading out its branches, which were all withered and yellow but it was lying in a corner among weeds and nettles. The tinsel star was still fixed to its tip and glimmered in the bright sunlight. Playing in the yard were two of the jolly children who had danced round the tree and been so pleased with it at Christmas time. The little one ran over and pulled off the golden star. "Look what I found on that ugly old Christmas tree," he said, trampling on the branches, which creaked beneath his boots. The tree looked at all the fresh growth and flowery splendor in the garden, and then it looked at itself and wished it had stayed in the dark corner of the loft. It remembered its fresh green youth in the forest, the merry Christmas Eve, and the little mice who had been so pleased with its story of Humpty Dumpty. "Gone, gone," said the poor tree. "If only I had been happy when I could. Gone, gone." Then the servant came out and chopped the tree into logs, a whole bundle of them. They blazed up beautifully under the big copper with many a deep sigh, each sigh like a little shot. So the children who were playing outside ran in and sat in front of the fire, looking into it and shouting. Bang, bang, but each crack, that was really a sigh. The tree remembered a summer's day in the woods, a winter's night, when the stars shone down. It remembered Christmas Eve and Humpty Dumpty, the only fairy story it had ever heard and known to tell. And then the tree was burned up. The boys played in the yard, and on his chest the little one wore the golden star, which the tree had borne on its happiest night. Now it was over, and the tree was gone, and the story too. Gone, gone, as all stories must be in time.